My name is Jake. I grew up in a seemingly perfect family, but if you looked closer, you'd see the cracks and the painful truths hidden beneath the surface. To the outside world, we appeared to be a happy family, loving parents, and two sons who seemed to get along fine. But what no one could see was the unfairness and the emotional weight I carried every single day. I was the older son, born 2 years before Eric. I always thought being the firstborn would mean something special, that I would be the one to receive the most love and attention. But I quickly learned that wasn't the case in my family. You see, Eric was born prematurely, and that made him weak from the start. It wasn't his fault, but the way my parents treated him made me feel like I was invisible in my own home. From the time Eric was just a baby, he was the center of attention. My parents treated him like he was made of glass. Everything about him was special, fragile, and deserving of extra care. And me? I was just expected to take care of myself. I never asked for it, but I quickly became the one who had to figure things out. I took on responsibilities that most kids my age didn't even know existed. I started doing things for my parents, helping out around the house, paying for things when I could, and trying to make sure everyone was okay. But no matter how hard I tried, I was always just in the background, while Eric was the shining star, the one everyone thought needed all the love and support. At first, I didn't mind. I loved my brother, and I understood that he needed more care because of his health. But over the years, that care turned into something else. It became an excuse for him to do nothing while I was expected to do everything. While I worked hard in school and helped out at home, Eric did very little. He never had to worry about chores, about bills, about anything. My parents always made excuses for him. He's too weak, they'd say. He can't help right now. He's been through so much. And I bought it. For a long time, I did. I thought, okay, that's fair. He's been through a lot. But deep down, I started to feel like something was off. Like I wasn't getting the same kind of love or appreciation that Eric was getting. One memory sticks with me to this day. It happened when I was about 8 years old. Eric and I went out to play one afternoon. I had been told to keep an eye on him, to make sure he was safe. At that age, I didn't fully grasp the weight of responsibility, but I knew it was important. So we went to the small forest behind our house, a place where we usually played, and I tried to make sure nothing bad would happen. But Eric, being Eric, always had to test the limits. There was this one dog in the area, a large, aggressive dog that would often bark at us whenever we came too close. I always warned Eric to stay away from it, but he didn't listen. He thought it would be funny to tease the dog. He began poking it with a stick, trying to get it to bark or chase him. I told him to stop, that it wasn't a game, but he wouldn't listen. The dog, predictably, didn't take kindly to being teased. It lunged at Eric, and before I could react, it bit him. Eric fell to the ground, screaming in pain. I rushed to him, pushing him out of the way and trying to get the dog off him. I managed to pull him to safety, but it was too late. Eric had been bitten, and it was serious. When we got home, my parents were in a panic, as you'd expect. But instead of thanking me for trying to protect Eric, they turned to me with anger in their eyes. "Jake, why didn't you protect your brother? You should have done more to stop this from happening," my mom said, her voice shaking. My father, standing behind her, was silent, but clearly upset. They didn't even look at Eric. It was like they had forgotten that it was Eric's fault for poking the dog in the first place. Instead, they focused on the fact that Eric had saved me by getting bit, and they said that I owed him my life for what he did. But the truth was, I had tried to protect him. I had tried to pull him away from the dog, but I couldn't stop him from doing something reckless. I was the one who had to pick up the pieces, but no one saw that. No one saw the effort I made to keep him safe. From that moment, something inside of me shifted. I started to realize how much I was expected to do for my family, and how little I was ever appreciated for it. It wasn't just about that one incident, but about the pattern that had been building up over the years. I was always the one who was there, always the one who had to take care of things, while Eric just got to sit back and enjoy life. And my parents, despite all of my sacrifices, always found ways to excuse his behavior and make me feel like I wasn't doing enough. As time went on, the imbalance grew worse. I was expected to shoulder all the responsibilities, financial, emotional, physical, while Eric was given a free pass. And the worst part was, they never saw how unfair it was. They never saw how much I was giving up, how much I was struggling, just to keep everything together. But the more I gave, the more they took. The more I did for them, the more they leaned on me without ever giving anything in return. The more I tried to prove myself worthy of their love, the more they took me for granted. It wasn't just frustrating, it was heartbreaking. I would give anything to go back to that moment when I was 8, to that summer afternoon when Eric and I played near that dog. If I had known then what I know now, maybe I would have taken a step back and realized that no matter how much I tried, I was never going to be seen as equal in my own family. But at the time, I just thought I was doing the right thing, being the responsible older brother, trying to protect my family. I had no idea that it was the beginning of a long road of feeling invisible and unappreciated. In the years that followed, that feeling of being overlooked only grew stronger. I would learn, in the most painful of ways, that in my family, the love and respect you gave was never returned in the way you expected. And that realization, well, it would change everything. But that's a story for the next chapter. After that day with the dog, I couldn't shake the feeling that something in my family dynamic was deeply wrong. The more I thought about it, the more the weight of everything I'd done for my parents and Eric began to hit me. I realized that I had spent my whole life bending over backward for them, but no matter how much I did, it was never enough. It wasn't just the dog incident that bothered me, it was the entire foundation of my relationship with them. It felt like I was expected to be the reliable one, the one who always stepped in, the one who kept the family afloat. But when it came down to it, I was just another person in the background, waiting to be used whenever they needed something. It wasn't long before the pressure began to wear me down. I kept taking on more and more responsibilities at home. My parents weren't getting any younger, and their health was declining. Eric was still the same lazy, spoiled, and completely uninterested in helping out. I was the one who had to handle their bills, pay for repairs to the house, and even buy groceries. I was the one running errands, doing the work, and putting in the effort while Eric sat back, living a carefree life, without a care in the world. He didn't have to worry about anything, and my parents always had an excuse for him. Eric's not well, they would say. He's been through a lot. He's just not strong like you, Jake. I didn't ask for any of this, but every time I tried to pull back, every time I thought about saying no, something inside me hesitated. I didn't want to be seen as selfish. I didn't want to disappoint them, especially when it came to Eric. He was my brother after all, and even though I resented how he was treated, I still loved him. But that love was becoming more and more painful, especially when I realized it was one-sided. One afternoon, everything came to a head. I had been helping my father with some paperwork at the house. It was a normal task, something I had done countless times before. My parents didn't really understand financial matters or legal paperwork, so they always asked me to take care of it. I didn't. I always thought it was my job, my responsibility. As I was going through the papers, I came across something unexpected, a folder labeled Estate Plan and Last Will. I wasn't the type to snoop. I had no reason to be curious about my parents' will after all. It seemed like something they would share with me when the time came, but something stopped me that day. Maybe it was the exhaustion that had been weighing on me for so long, or maybe it was the mounting frustration I had been feeling toward my family. Either way, I opened the folder. What I saw made my stomach drop. The entire estate, every penny, every asset, the house, the savings, everything was left to Eric. I stared at the document in disbelief. I read through the pages again, sure that I must have missed something. But no, it was all there, plain and clear. Everything was going to Eric. Not even a mention of me, except for a few lines that said something along the lines of, "We love both our sons equally." That was it. It was as if I didn't even exist. I felt my heart race. The blood drained from my face. I had been the one who had kept them afloat financially for years. I was the one who paid their mortgage, helped with groceries, and fixed things around the house. I had sacrificed my time, my money, and my energy to make sure they had everything they needed. And this was the thanks I got, a footnote in a will. I had always assumed that I would be included in the will. Maybe not as much as Eric, but surely something to acknowledge all the years I had spent helping them. But no, it was all going to Eric, the same brother who had never worked a day in his life, the same brother who had never done anything for them, except cause them stress and make them run after him. The same brother who, after every family crisis, would expect everything to be handed to him without lifting a finger. I was shaking now, a mix of disbelief and anger bubbling up inside of me. How could they do this? How could they just ignore everything I had done for them and give it all to him? Had they never appreciated me? Had they ever truly seen the sacrifices I made? I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to scream, but I knew I had to stay calm. I closed the folder and sat there for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, trying to understand what had just happened. And then my father walked into the room, noticing that I wasn't scanning anything. His face shifted from casual to concerned. "Jake, what's taking so long?" he asked, his voice light, oblivious to the storm brewing inside of me. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't even try to hide the will. I just lifted it up, holding it in front of him, looking him straight in the eye. "So, this is how it is?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. "Everything is going to Eric? After everything I've done for you? This is how you repay me?" My father's face paled, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he sighed, as if he were talking to a child having a tantrum. "Jake," he said, "it's not what you think. It looks pretty damn clear to me," I snapped. "I've been paying your mortgage, buying your groceries, fixing the house, and Eric does nothing. Nothing. And you still decide that he's the one who deserves everything?" My father's expression shifted to one of discomfort, and instead of explaining himself, he simply said 2 words that made my blood boil. "It's complicated." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a couple of empty words meant to brush me off and make me feel like I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the one who was wrong here. I had given everything to them, and they had given me nothing in return. I was about to leave the room when I realized I needed to hear from my mother too. I called out for her, and she came into the room, looking shocked when she saw the will in my hands. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she just stared at me, guilty but unwilling to accept responsibility. "Jake, honey," she said, softly, her voice full of that fake sympathy I had grown to loathe. "You don't need the inheritance. You have a good job. You're independent. Eric, well, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." That was it. That was the moment when I realized that they didn't care. They didn't care about me. They only cared about Eric, the son who had never lifted a finger to help them. "Got it," I said, my voice suddenly calm, almost eerily so. "I understand now." I put the will down on the table and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. For the first time in years, I wasn't going to bail them out anymore. If they wanted something, they could figure it out for themselves. I was done. Little did I know, that moment would be the beginning of a chain of events that would push me further away from them than I ever imagined. After I walked out of the house that day, something inside me shifted permanently. For years, I had been the one who constantly held the family together, financially and emotionally. I put my own needs aside to take care of them. But now, as I stood there, staring at the door I had just slammed behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. But it wasn't the kind of freedom that felt exhilarating. It was a heavy, bitter freedom. I had walked away, but in doing so, I had left a part of me behind. I was letting go of the person I had been, the one who constantly tried to please everyone, the one who thought that if he just gave more, things would get better. But no matter how much I gave, no matter how hard I worked, I had never been enough. I had been nothing more than a source of support for my family, a tool to fix problems, a backup when things got tough. But I wasn't loved for who I was, and it hurts. The next few days were suffocatingly quiet. At first, I thought my parents would reach out. I thought they'd apologize, maybe even acknowledge what I had done for them all these years. But no, they didn't. They didn't even call. I kept waiting for the inevitable phone call, the one where they would beg me to come back to help them out again, but it never came. Then, almost 2 weeks passed, and the silence became unbearable. It wasn't that I missed them, it was the waiting. I had gotten so used to being the one who was always there for them, always ready to help, always ready to fix everything. The silence now felt like a weight, a constant reminder that I was no longer the one they depended on. It was a strange feeling, and honestly, it terrified me. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. I was sitting at my desk, doing work, when I saw a message from my father. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see another one of his transactional messages, but my curiosity got the better of me. "The property taxes are due," the message read. Nothing else. "No, how have you been?" "No, I'm sorry for what happened." Just a cold, impersonal request for money. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. This was it. After everything, this was the message I received. It wasn't a plea for understanding, a request for reconciliation, or even a simple apology. It was another demand, another expectation that I would just drop everything and help them out like I had done all these years. I sat there for a moment, trying to control the rage boiling inside me. I wasn't going to fall for it. I wasn't going to be their ATM anymore. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm sure Eric can handle it, since the house is his now." I felt a strange satisfaction as I pressed send. For the first time in my life, I wasn't playing the role of the family savior. I wasn't going to bail them out, not this time. It didn't take long for the responses to start pouring in. My mother called immediately. I didn't pick up. Then a text came through. "Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk." I didn't reply. The truth was, I had nothing left to say. There was nothing more to discuss. They had made their choice, and now they had to live with it. For years, they had treated me like a convenience, like a tool they could rely on whenever it suited them. And now that I had stopped playing that role, they were scrambling to regain their hold over me. About an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Eric. His message was dripping with the kind of entitlement I had come to expect from him. "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do," he wrote. I almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. He didn't even see it. He didn't see the years of my life that I had sacrificed for them. He didn't understand what it meant to be constantly expected to give without ever receiving anything in return. "No, I think you've got it covered, since you're the favorite and all," I responded. There was a brief pause before his reply came through. "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man. It's just money." I clenched my jaw. Of course, to him, it was just money. It always was. But it wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about the years I had spent doing everything for them, while they rewarded Eric's laziness and manipulation. "Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay for the mortgage, right?" I shot back. There was no reply, just silence. And in that silence, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I was relieved. I had finally taken a stand. I had broken free from the toxic cycle that had kept me trapped for so long. The next few days passed without much communication from my family. My parents sent me a few more messages, all in the same tone, cold, transactional, demanding. My mom even went as far as to say, "Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up. Why are you abandoning us?" I felt my blood boil at the manipulation in her words. Abandoning them? After everything I had done? After years of sacrificing my time, my money, my energy? It was as if they thought they could guilt me into doing it all again. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I replied simply, "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Eric can take care of you." The silence that followed was almost deafening. I didn't expect them to change, but I did expect them to at least try to manipulate me one last time. But this time I wasn't budging. And then, just when I thought it was over, I received one more message. My father, the ever-present voice of guilt and manipulation, texted me, "We're not asking for much, just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish." Selfish. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Selfish? After everything I had done for them, I was the selfish one? It was almost laughable. But it wasn't funny. It was heartbreaking. I took a long, steadying breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I knew this was it, the final message that would make it clear to them that I wasn't going back, that I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. "I'm done," I typed. "Goodbye." I pressed send and turned off my phone. That was the moment I knew I had taken the final step away from them. I was done being their financial safety net, done being the one they called on when things got tough. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. I was free. The silence that followed my final message felt both unsettling and liberating at the same time. I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before, and although I wasn't looking for validation, part of me expected some kind of reaction from my family. But the days passed, and nothing came. My phone remained quiet, except for the occasional spam email or junk message. It seemed too easy, like they had given up on me so quickly, like I was just a convenient tool they no longer needed. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. It couldn't be. Then, one morning, I woke up to a barrage of notifications on my phone. It was from Facebook notifications that made my stomach churn. I clicked on the first one, and there it was. My mother had posted something. It was all over her feed, written in that familiar, passive-aggressive tone. I knew so well. I never raised my son to be this selfish. Family takes care of each other, no matter what. I don't know where I went wrong. Her words were carefully crafted, disguised as a plea for sympathy, but beneath it was an attack, a subtle accusation that I was the problem, that I was the one who had failed the family. As I scrolled further down, I saw more posts. My dad had chimed in with his own statement. True family members never abandon you when you need them the most. We gave our children everything, and this is how they repay us. I'm heartbroken. Then, my brother Eric posted something even more frustrating. Some people think family is about money, but true love is about sacrifice. I would do anything for my parents, but some people are too selfish to understand that. It was like watching my entire family try to paint me as the villain. They had twisted the narrative, made me the bad guy for finally putting my foot down and refusing to be their emotional and financial crutch anymore. The hypocrisy was staggering. They were the ones who had never given me anything in return, the ones who had used me for years, and now they were portraying me as the selfish one. I felt my anger rise as I read the comments. Some of their friends who had never known the full story took their side. "Jake's a disgrace," one of them wrote. "You raised him right, but he turned out this way." The betrayal hit me harder than anything else. They were not only attacking me, but they were manipulating everyone they knew into thinking I was the one who had done something wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. They could spread their lies, but I wasn't going to let them have the last word. I created my own post, something raw, something honest. I wasn't going to let them turn this into a smear campaign without standing up for myself. It was time to tell my side of the story. The weight of the situation hit me harder than I expected. For days, I had stayed silent, letting my family's passive-aggressive posts on social media hang in the air, knowing they were trying to manipulate the narrative and make me feel guilty. But each time I saw another message from my mother or Eric, or another comment from their friends criticizing me, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them drag my name through the mud without defending myself. I sat down one evening, scrolling through their posts, reading their accusations over and over again. They were telling everyone that I had abandoned them, that I was the selfish one. I had seen this kind of manipulation before, the way they would turn every situation to make me look like the bad guy. But this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. I created a new Facebook account, one that I had kept for years, a private account, with just a handful of close friends and family who actually knew the truth about me. This would be my space, my chance to set the record straight without all the noise from my parents and Eric's followers. I took a deep breath and started typing. I was going to write the truth, no matter how difficult it was to share. I had spent too many years holding back, and now it was time to let it all out. Here's what I wrote. I've been silent for the past several days, but I can't stay silent any longer. My family has been spreading lies about me online, and it's time for me to set the record straight. For those who don't know the full story, let me explain. For years, I have been the one supporting my parents financially. I paid for their mortgage, I bought groceries, I paid bills, and I took care of the house while my brother Eric did absolutely nothing. My parents were always too busy or too tired to do any of it themselves, so I stepped in. I didn't mind. I thought that's what family does. But over the years, I realized that no matter how much I did, it was never enough. Eric, my younger brother, who has never worked a day in his life, has never contributed to anything, always got the best of everything. He was always treated like the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And when my parents were in need, I was expected to step in and fix everything for them. I was the one who gave, while Eric received without lifting a finger. I didn't mind helping out at first. I love my parents. I love my brother. But when I found out that they had decided to leave everything to Eric in their will, I couldn't stay silent anymore. After everything I had done for them, after all the sacrifices I had made, they gave it all to Eric, and they didn't even have the decency to explain why. To make matters worse, when I confronted them about the will, they brushed me off. My mother told me I didn't need the inheritance because I was doing well on my own, while Eric was struggling. She said it so casually, like my years of sacrifice meant nothing. It's not about the money, it's about the principle. I have been there for them, financially and emotionally, for as long as I can remember. And this is how they repay me, by rewarding Eric's laziness, his entitlement, and his refusal to grow up. For years, I've been expected to play the role of the good son, the responsible one, the one who fixes everything. But what about me? When do I get to be seen for who I am, and not just for what I can do for them? I know some of you might be thinking that family is about helping each other no matter what. But the truth is, family should be about mutual respect. It's about giving, yes, but it's also about receiving. For years, I gave everything, but I got nothing in return. I was used, and when I finally stopped giving, I was made out to be the villain. This isn't me turning my back on my family. This is me finally standing up for myself. I deserve respect. I deserve to be treated with the same love and consideration that I've always shown them. I've sacrificed enough for them, and it's time for me to start taking care of myself. To my parents and to Eric, you've made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I am done being your doormat. I've earned the right to live my life on my own terms, without being used. You may not understand, but this is my decision, and I won't apologize for it. I took a deep breath as I read it over again. It felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I wasn't trying to get anyone to side with me. I just wanted the truth to be out there. I wanted everyone to know that I wasn't some selfish, heartless person who had abandoned his family. I hit the post button, and immediately, the notifications started flooding in. Some people liked the post. Some people commented in support, telling me that they understood. But the most surprising thing was the number of private messages I received from family members, cousins, old friends who apologized for what I had been through. They didn't know the whole story before, but now they do, and they were on my side. It felt liberating. For the first time in years, I was telling my story. I was no longer hiding in the shadows, letting my family dictate who I was. The truth was out there, and it felt like I was finally free. But, of course, the backlash from my family was swift. My parents and Eric flooded my inbox with angry messages. Eric texted me first, calling me a traitor, telling me I was airing our dirty laundry for everyone to see. My father called me, yelling at me for ruining the family. But I didn't care anymore. I had made my peace. The truth had been spoken, and I wasn't going to let their guilt and manipulation drag me back into their world. I blocked their numbers and turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. After I posted the truth, the floodgates opened. My family's fury was expected. They bombarded me with angry messages, accusing me of betraying them, of being selfish. Eric, in particular, was furious. "You really had to air all our business out like this?" he texted, his words dripping with entitlement. "You have no respect for family." I wasn't surprised by his reaction. He had always been the one who could do no wrong, always the golden child. His message only confirmed what I already knew. He would never understand. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the inheritance. It was about years of sacrifice and being treated like I didn't matter. And now, he was just playing the victim, pretending that he hadn't been the one who had benefited the most from the family dynamic. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I had said my piece, and now it was time to move on. The next few days were a blur. My phone was still filled with messages, but I didn't feel the need to answer any of them. I had made the decision to block them, to cut off that toxic cycle once and for all. I turned off my phone, put it in a drawer, and focused on what really mattered, myself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to check in on them, to worry about what they were doing, or to pick up the pieces when they fell apart. I started to rebuild my life. I took time for myself, something I hadn't done in so long. I started spending time with people who genuinely cared about me, people who didn't see me as a resource to be tapped into whenever things got tough. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away over the years, and I realized how much of my energy had been drained by the constant demands of my family. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe freely. I didn't have to be the one who held everything together. I didn't have to carry the weight of their mistakes anymore. I was allowed to be human. I was allowed to make mistakes, to live my life without having to please anyone. The guilt, at first, was overwhelming. I questioned if I had done the right thing. I wondered if I should have tried harder, if I should have found a way to make peace. But deep down, I knew that I had made the right choice. I had spent years sacrificing for them, and when I finally decided to stand up for myself, I had been met with nothing but anger and manipulation. It was clear that nothing would ever change unless I changed. And so, I let go. I stopped trying to fix them. I stopped trying to be the perfect son. And for the first time, I felt at peace. In the end, I learned something crucial. Family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about respect, mutual care, and love. And I realized I didn't need to sacrifice my happiness to earn that love. I would find it in the people who truly cared about me, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. And with that, I moved on, not just from my family, but from the years of pain, guilt, and manipulation. I was free.